Hi, my name's Ellie. Thanks for joining me today. Did you know that we have mapped the entire human being? We know everything there is to know about what exists in terms of genetic material. And we also understand things like autosomes and chromosomes, although if I'm going to confess to you, which of course I will, the scientists know these things. I don't necessarily know it, but the scientists know. The scientists know an awful lot about the human body. However, there are things that they still don't know. Now, DNA is a big deal, and we've particularly harnessed DNA since the 1990s for things like crime solving and genetic mapping and things like that. We can figure out our ancient ancestors, find out what part of the world we came from through DNA. However, did you know that scientists still don't even know what 95%, in fact, I think the correct figure is 98%, what 98% of our DNA does? They have no idea. In fact, scientists have even started calling it junk DNA, as though it doesn't do anything. But what if it's not junk? What if it actually is a series of instructions left over from our ancient past and the ancient world? And what if that 98% of our DNA is sitting dormant, waiting to be activated? And what if the answers to those instructions were sitting out there in space, in that dark blackness of space, just waiting to be unveiled? Well, as it turns out, that might be the case. There has been a major discovery, a tiny little thing, but it's major, and it's coming out of the International Space Station. It actually looks as though science is about to unlock the secrets of our DNA. I hope you'll enjoy today's episode as we talk about this wonderful brand new discovery. By using AI-guided nanobioreactors, scientific researchers have been able to observe the way that blood-forming cells react in real time. Within hours of space exposure, what they discovered was that human cells showed signs of accelerated aging. But instead of shutting down, those same cells began to express genes from what is ordinarily referred to as the dark genome. And this is regions of DNA that have long been dismissed as junk or dormant, that 98% of unknown. Well, turns out it's not junk. It turns out it's a hidden code, dormant potential, the shadow side of our biology waiting for the right conditions in order to awaken. Our biology has a shadow side. Of course it does. It makes perfect sense. We already know that our spiritual self has a shadow side, the aspect of us that we tend to keep hidden or dormant inside our minds. So if our consciousness is more than just our mind, then yes, of course, if it also encompasses our physical self, then it's just as likely that our biology would also have a shadow that exists inside our self, that is part of our whole consciousness. In spiritual psychology, there is an archetype referred to as the initiate. This is a person who undergoes a transformative journey, often marked by things like challenge, solitude, and revelation. They are the kind of person who leaves the familiar world, they enter into the wilderness, and then they're transformed. Think of Moses up on the mountain, or Christ in the desert, or Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree. Each figure undergoes a stripping away of things like comfort, identity, or even gravity itself. And in that stripping away, something ancient awakens inside them. The dark genome is the biological echo of this spiritual truth. It's the part of us that remains silent until we're tested, until we're elevated, and until we're all alone. And spaceflight, well, spaceflight is the modern trek through the wilderness, isn't it? A space capsule is a kind of sterile, floating monastery where the body is forced to confront its own limits. And by doing that, it also reveals its secrets. So let's look at this more closely. In ancient texts, there's a recurring theme, and that is that humanity carries within it a divine code. In Genesis, we're told that we're made in the image of God. In Gnostic writings, the spark of divinity is buried deep within the matter. And in Kabbalah, the soul descends through layers of concealment, each one of them a veil over its true nature. Now, I've created a number of videos in which I've been able to show that when translated word for word correctly from the ancient Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic text of the Bible, well, the Bible actually says that Adam and Eve were both created in the biological likeness of their creator. The Gnostics believed this specifically. And if you want to know more about that, I suggest checking out my Gospel of John series of 3 videos, in particular part 2, where I talk about how Adam and Eve were created with 7 different traits belonging to Yaldabaoth. So this is where science and the spiritual archetypes suddenly collide, and this is kind of exciting. The dark genome, that 98% that we don't know, may be a biological veil. Can you imagine that? Hidden and waiting to be lifted. But if it is, and more likely when it is lifted, what are we going to find? The answer to that question is, I think we know the answer. We're going to find a part of us that currently transcends the physical world. If we've had to go deep into space in order to know that the dark elements of our DNA exist and actually have a purpose, well, what that means literally is that it belongs in the heavens. Did that just click for you? It begins to speak to us and become activated when we are in the heavens. This is quite a poetic discovery and perhaps even prophetic in nature. It literally tells us that physical ascension is linked to our human potential. And that exact message is strongly embedded in every single ancient, tribal, or mystical tradition. After his resurrection, for example, Jesus is described as ascending bodily into the sky while his disciples watched, marking his return to the divine realm and the completion of his earthly mission. In the book of Genesis, it's also written that Enoch walked with God, then he was no more because God took him, back to the sky. Later texts like the book of Enoch also expand this in more detail and turn it into a celestial ascent where he's shown heavenly secrets. And then the feathered serpent god of Aztec mythology as well, who was associated with wisdom and light, he's said to have ascended into the sky on a raft of serpents or flames, becoming the morning star after departing the earthly realm. Think about this. Spiritual ascension and rising up into the heavens has always meant an awakening of human divinity. And now science, once again, is catching up because the DNA tells us that it's true. So what does this mean for us here on Earth? All right, so science has been able to show that the unveiling of dark genomes is linked to the pressure that's felt by those who travel into space, the solitude, the mental and the physical stress, the remarkable change in the person's environment. What this means for us is that the challenges we face, like stress and solitude and change, aren't just obstacles. They can actually help to reveal hidden parts of ourselves. These experiences can trigger something deep inside us. They can activate parts of our biology, our creativity, and our spirit that normally stay quiet when life is easy or familiar. So when we go through tough times, whether it's emotional or physical or spiritual, we might actually be unlocking our deepest potential. Remember, they do say that whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This small discovery in science reveals a massive truth in exactly the same way. It tells us that there is more to us, which we already know, of course, intuitively speaking. Of course we do. But now we officially know as well. And it may also confirm why our spiritual selves are here, experiencing this material existence. Think about how the Bible is filled with human challenges, how the ancient alien stories talk about our creation for the purpose of physical labour, and how the Gnostics say that our material existence is a place that we must learn to navigate in order to be released from its imprisonment. We are here, it seems, and science is beginning to discover that we are here to experience the very challenges that will allow us to rise to the heavens. So here's the question. If this is just one small step towards discovering who we truly are, then what do you think your hidden DNA is hiding behind a veil? What it is might just be the key to your ascension, written in the dark genomes of your material makeup. And maybe, just maybe, the next frontier isn't out there in space. Maybe it's here in the hidden architecture of our DNA and who we truly are. If you enjoyed this episode, it might be of interest to you to know where I got this information from, and I am one of the first people to be able to share it with you. I got it from Ground News. I'm subscribed to their science topics, and this discovery was only a few hours old when I was notified about it. As soon as the findings were published for the very first time, the news hit my screen. Ground News is not just about getting both sides of the political arguments. It's one of my favourite places to catch up on anything I might like to stay up to date with on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of the news is unreported or paradigm shifting research just like this. If you use my affiliate link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan at the moment, which unlocks much deeper analysis and allows for curated feeds that are tailored to your interests. And there's also the basic Pro plan, which is just, I think, $9.99 a year, which isn't too bad, really. So when people ask me, Ellie, how do you do it? Well, that's how I do it. I just stay informed in imaginative ways. Welcome to the new world. This is Ellie Dreams Down Under. I love knowing you're here, and I'll see you in my dreams.